You'll be paying for my wedding. It's only fair, my sister declared. When I refused, Mom shouted, then don't bother coming home again. That night, I closed our joint account and transferred the deed to my new condo into my name alone. On the next day, I woke up to 34 missed calls. I, 32M, stared at my phone screen, watching the notifications pile up. 34 missed calls. 17 from Mom. 12 from my sister. 5 from Dad. The voicemails kept coming, each notification accompanied by that familiar buzz that used to make me anxious. Now it just made me tired. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 days earlier, I'd driven home for what I thought would be a simple family dinner. The drive from the city took 2 hours, and I'd made it countless times over the years. This time felt different somehow, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was the way Mom's voice had sounded on the phone when she insisted I come home that weekend. Not asked. Insisted. I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home just after 6. The house looked the same as always, though Dad had finally repainted the shutters like Mom had been nagging him to do for years. My sister's car was already there, parked in what used to be my spot. Small thing, but it bothered me more than it should have. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She pulled me into a hug that lasted a beat too long, and when she stepped back, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She told me to come in, that everyone was waiting. The way she said everyone made my stomach tighten. The dining room table was set for 4, which was normal enough. Dad sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone. My sister sat across from where I assumed I'd be sitting, and she was practically vibrating with excitement. Her boyfriend wasn't there, which struck me as odd given what I'd later learn. We made it through approximately 15 minutes of small talk before my sister could no longer contain herself. She announced that she was getting married. I congratulated her, asked about the proposal, did all the things a good brother is supposed to do. She gushed about the ring, about how romantic it had been, about the venue they'd already looked at. Then Mom cleared her throat. She exchanged a look with Dad, who suddenly became very interested in his pot roast. Mom explained that my sister had found the perfect venue, but it was expensive. Very expensive. She said they'd been discussing it as a family, and they'd come to a decision about how to handle the costs. I waited. The silence stretched out uncomfortably. My sister leaned forward, her eyes bright with that same entitled gleam I'd seen too many times growing up. She informed me that I'd be paying for the wedding. Not asked. Informed. She said it was only fair, given everything. I must have misheard. I asked her to repeat that. She did, slower this time, like I was stupid. She said I'd be paying for her wedding because it was only fair. She reminded me that I had a good job in the city, that I'd been selfish keeping all my money to myself, that family was supposed to help family. She'd already done the math, she told me. With my salary, I could easily cover the $40,000 venue, the catering, the photographer, the dress. She'd even be willing to go with a slightly less expensive flower arrangement if I was going to be difficult about it. I looked at Mom and Dad, waiting for the punchline. Surely this was a joke, some kind of test. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom's expression was set in stone. I said no. Simple as that. Just no. My sister's face went red. She demanded to know why not. She listed all the reasons I owed this to her, to the family. How I'd always been Dad's favorite. How I'd gotten to go to the better college. How I'd never had to struggle the way she had. Never mind that I'd worked 2 jobs through school while she'd partied her way through community college on Mom and Dad's dime. Never mind that I'd earned my scholarship through actual effort. I told her again, more firmly this time. I said no, I wouldn't be financing her wedding. I suggested she and her fiancé save up like normal people do. I offered to contribute a reasonable gift, maybe $1,000, but that was it. That's when Mom erupted. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a scream. She told me I was being selfish and cruel. She said that after everything they'd done for me, this was how I repaid them. She brought up every perceived slight from my childhood, every time she thought I'd been ungrateful. The time she'd driven me to a job interview, and I hadn't thanked her properly. The Christmas I'd spent with my girlfriend's family instead of coming home. The fact that I'd bought a condo in the city instead of staying close to them. I tried to explain that those situations weren't comparable. I tried to use logic, reason. I might as well have been talking to the wall. My sister started crying, the kind of theatrical sobbing she'd perfected by age 7. She wailed about how her special day was ruined, how I'd always hated her, how I wanted her to be miserable. Dad finally spoke up, suggesting maybe we all calm down and discuss this rationally. Mom whirled on him. She asked whose side he was on. Dad retreated back into silence. I stood up from the table. I told them I needed some air, that we could discuss this when everyone had cooled down. I didn't even believe that myself, but I needed out of that room. My sister grabbed my arm as I passed her chair. She told me I had to do this, that I owed her. There was something almost desperate in her voice that gave me pause. I asked her why she thought I owed her anything. She couldn't answer. Her mouth opened and closed a few times before she just repeated that I had to help, that it wasn't fair otherwise. I pulled my arm free and walked toward the door. That's when Mom delivered her ultimatum. She told me that if I walked out that door without agreeing to pay for the wedding, I shouldn't bother coming home again. She said I wouldn't be welcome in this house, in this family. She asked me if that's what I wanted, to throw away my family over money. I turned back to look at her. Really look at her. I saw the same woman who'd guilt-tripped me into giving my sister my car when she crashed hers in college. The same woman who'd convinced me to pay for my sister's security deposit on her apartment because she was struggling. The same woman who'd borrowed $3,000 from me 2 years ago to help with some emergency that I was never quite clear on and had never paid back. I realized with sudden, crushing clarity that this would never end. There would always be one more thing I owed them. One more way I was selfish for not sacrificing everything I'd worked for. I asked Mom if she was serious. She said she'd never been more serious in her life. So I left. The drive back to the city was a blur. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Part of me kept expecting my phone to ring with an apology, with someone saying they'd gone too far. The phone stayed silent. When I got home, I sat in my condo and looked around at everything I'd built. I'd bought this place 6 months ago, after years of saving. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. Or mostly mine. The deed was in both my name and Mom's. She'd insisted on that when I bought it, said it was for tax purposes, that it would help me somehow. I'd been too exhausted from the buying process to argue. Then I remembered the joint savings account. Mom had convinced me to open it when I'd started my job, said it would be easier for family emergencies. I was the only one who put money in it, but both Mom and my sister had access. I'd never checked it carefully because I trusted them. I logged into my banking app. The joint account should have had about $60,000 in it, money I'd been saving for years. It had $800. I went through the transaction history with growing horror. Withdrawals going back months. Small enough that I wouldn't notice, frequent enough that they added up. Cash withdrawals made by my sister. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. The most recent withdrawal was from 3 days ago. $5,000, taken by Mom. They'd been stealing from me. Planning this. The wedding demand wasn't spontaneous desperation. It was the next level of their scheme. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like resolve. I called my lawyer. Yes, at 10 p.m. I paid him enough that he answered. I explained the situation with the condo deed and asked what I could do. He told me that since I'd paid for the entire property and could prove it, we could fix this. It would take some paperwork, some signatures, but we could remove Mom's name from the deed. He asked if I was sure I wanted to do this. I'd never been more sure of anything. Next, I closed the joint account and transferred what remained to my personal account. Then I opened the credit cards I knew about, the ones Mom had convinced me to add her as an authorized user on for emergencies. I removed her access and changed all my passwords. I went to the bank's website and set up alerts for every account, every card. I changed my address with them so statements would only come to my condo. I updated my beneficiaries on everything, removing my parents and sister. It took until 3 in the morning, but by the time I finished, they couldn't access a single dollar of mine. The lawyer called me at 8 the next morning. He'd been working through the night, pulling strings. We had an emergency appointment with a notary at 10. By noon, the deed to my condo was in my name alone. Just mine. Mom's signature had been forged when she'd been added, something I'd suspected but never confirmed. The lawyer assured me she could face charges if I wanted to press them. I told him I'd think about it. That's when the calls started coming in. I watched my phone light up with Mom's number. Then my sister's. Then Dad's. Over and over. I didn't answer. I knew what they wanted. They'd gone to access the account and found it closed. Or maybe Mom had tried to use one of the credit cards. The voicemails were a journey. The first few from Mom were confused, asking if there was a problem with the bank. Then they turned angry, demanding I call her back immediately. Then desperate, saying we needed to talk about this misunderstanding. My sister's messages were purely vitriolic, calling me every name she could think of. Dads were just sad, asking me to please pick up, saying we were family. I let them pile up while I went to work. My job in financial consulting had taught me a lot about protecting assets, about reading people's intentions. I should have seen this coming years ago. During my lunch break, I finally listened to all the messages. 34 calls had turned into 47. There were texts too, hundreds of them. My sister had sent me a long screed about what a terrible person I was, how she hoped I died alone, how karma would get me. Mom's texts were manipulative, switching between rage and playing the victim. Then came the text that made my blood run cold. Mom informed me that she'd been to a lawyer, that she still had rights to my condo, that I couldn't just steal from family. She said she'd see me in court. I forwarded the message to my lawyer. He called me 5 minutes later, laughing. He explained that she had no case whatsoever, that her name had been fraudulently added to the deed in the first place, and that if she pushed this, she'd be the one facing charges. He asked if I wanted him to send her a cease and desist letter. I thought about it. Really thought about it. This was my family. Despite everything, they were my family. Then I thought about the 34 missed calls, the empty bank account, the years of manipulation and guilt trips, the entitlement, the assumption that I existed to fund their wants. I told him to send the letter. That evening, my uncle called. Mom's brother. He was the one person in the family I'd always respected, mainly because he'd moved across the country 30 years ago and maintained strict boundaries with everyone. He asked me what the hell was going on because Mom had called him crying about how I'd stolen from her. I explained everything. The wedding demand, the ultimatum, the discovered theft, the condo situation. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he told me he was proud of me. He said he'd been waiting for years for me to wake up and see what they were doing. He admitted he'd gone through something similar with my grandmother, that it was why he'd moved away. He warned me that it was going to get worse before it got better, that they'd try everything to manipulate me into backing down. He was right. The next day, I got calls from extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one had been fed a different story by Mom. Some heard that I'd stolen money from her. Others heard that I'd refused to help my sister in a medical emergency. One cousin called to yell at me for abandoning my disabled mother, which was news to me since Mom had been perfectly healthy last I checked. I didn't try to defend myself. I simply told each person that they were welcome to believe whatever they wanted, but I knew the truth, and that was enough. Most of them sputtered and hung up. A few actually listened and asked for my side of things. Those conversations were harder, but more honest. My sister showed up at my office 3 days after I'd closed the accounts. Security called to ask if I wanted her removed. I went down to the lobby instead. She looked terrible, mascara running, hair a mess. She grabbed onto my suit jacket and begged me to fix this. She said her fiancé's parents were questioning whether they should go through with the wedding if she couldn't even afford a proper venue. She said her life was falling apart. I asked her how much of my money she'd taken from the joint account. She didn't answer at first. Then she admitted it had been about $20,000 over the past year. She said she'd needed it, that I had plenty, that it wasn't a big deal. She promised to pay me back if I'd just give her the money for the wedding. I told her no. I told her she'd stolen from me, that Mom had stolen from me, and that I was done being their ATM. I said she could have a wedding she could actually afford or wait until she saved up like everyone else. She slapped me, right there in my office lobby. Security had her removed within seconds, and she was screaming the entire way out about how I'd ruined her life, how she'd never forgive me. I pressed charges. Not for the slap, though I could have. For the theft. My lawyer had been building a case anyway, documenting all the unauthorized withdrawals. With her admission recorded on my office security cameras, we had what we needed. Mom's reaction was nuclear. She called me from the police station where she'd gone with my sister. She screamed that I was sending my own family to jail, that I was a monster, that she'd never forgive me. She said Dad was ashamed of me, that I'd broken his heart. I asked if I could speak to Dad. There was a long pause, some muffled conversation. Dad got on the phone. His voice was quiet, defeated. He told me he didn't understand why I was doing this, that family should forgive. He asked what I wanted him to say. I told him I wanted him to say that what they did was wrong, that stealing from me was wrong, that demanding I fund a $40,000 wedding was wrong, that threatening to disown me for setting boundaries was wrong. He couldn't say it. He just sighed and said that Mom and my sister needed help, that I was in a position to help them, so why wouldn't I? I asked him why their needs always outweighed mine, why my hard work should fund their wants, why I wasn't allowed to have boundaries without being called selfish. He didn't have an answer. He just handed the phone back to Mom. The legal process moved quickly. My lawyer had sent the cease and desist, which Mom had ignored, trying to file a fraudulent claim on my condo. That backfired spectacularly when the investigation revealed the forged signature. The DA was surprisingly interested in prosecuting, mainly because this wasn't an isolated incident. Turned out Mom had pulled similar schemes with other family members over the years, but no one had ever pressed charges. I was given an option: pursue full criminal charges or accept restitution. They'd have to pay back everything they'd taken, with interest, on a payment plan. They'd be barred from contacting me. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. I took the restitution option, not because I forgave them. I just didn't want to spend years tied up in a criminal case. The payment plan was set at $500 a month, which would take years. My sister had to sell her engagement ring to make the first few payments. The wedding was canceled. Her fiancé left her shortly after, apparently unwilling to deal with the legal drama. Mom and Dad had to take out a loan against their house. Dad actually had to come out of retirement and get a part-time job. He sent me an email afterward, not angry, just sad. He said he was disappointed in how everything had turned out, that he'd hoped we could be a family again someday. I responded honestly. I told him that I'd hoped for that too, but hope wasn't enough. Actions mattered. They'd shown me through their actions what they truly thought of me, a wallet with legs. Until they could acknowledge what they'd done wrong, genuinely apologize, and show through sustained change behavior that they saw me as a person rather than a resource, there was nothing to discuss. He never replied. That was 8 months ago. The calls have mostly stopped. I still get the occasional text from my sister, usually around holidays or her birthday, reminting me what a terrible person I am. I block each new number she uses. Mom's flying monkeys still occasionally reach out, but they're easier to handle now. I've learned to simply say that I don't discuss family matters with people outside the immediate situation and in the conversation. My uncle visits sometimes. He says the rest of the family has mostly moved on to other drama, that I'm old news. Apparently, my cousin is now the family scapegoat for refusing to co-sign a loan for his brother. The cycle continues with someone else. I've been in therapy. It helps. My therapist says I'm processing decades of financial abuse and emotional manipulation. Some days are harder than others. I still occasionally feel guilty, wonder if I overreacted. Then I remember the 34 missed calls, the empty account, the entitlement in my sister's eyes when she demanded I pay for her wedding. And I remember that I said no. Just no. And I meant it. The condo is entirely mine now. I'm dating someone who thinks it's insane that my family expected me to fund a wedding. I have real friends who respect my boundaries. I'm saving money again, this time with proper security measures. Sometimes I drive past the exit to my hometown and feel a pang of something like loss. But I keep driving, because I finally learned that family isn't supposed to bleed you dry. Real love doesn't come with price tags and ultimatums. And the people who truly care about you won't wait until you're useful to show it. I'm 32 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm free.